I'm going to call the meeting to order. So I would like to say good morning. My name is Adele Imrie, and I am the chair of the TCHC Board of Directors. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting, which is taking place in committee room number 1 at City Hall and virtually using our WebEx platform. We're also live streaming today's meeting on YouTube. I would like to begin with an acknowledgement that the land we are all on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We also acknowledge all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers, as immigrants, either in this generation or in past generations, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those who were brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. I would like to start my comments with acknowledging the first edition of the On Board, the newsletter that was sent to board members. And I hope everyone got to see it. There was a great story on Midnight Basketball program, and that's been running at TCHC for 10 years for boys ages 13 to 18. And I understand that there's an emerging program for girls as well. So there's a link to the videos. I would highly recommend them. And I think it's a very inspirational and important program. And I know that there were other stories about football and other programs that are being offered and are very important for our tenants. I know that Sean, our new CEO, will be attending a midnight basketball event, and I would like to just offer my thanks. Ada, I'm not sure who's involved in doing the onboard newsletter, but if you could just please extend our thank you, and it's greatly appreciated. It's very important for the board, so thank you very much. So my next item of business, at the last meeting, I did touch on the achievement of one of our fellow directors, Debbie Douglas. And given that Debbie was not at the meeting, I promised that there would be a more fulsome recognition and presentation and celebration of her at today's meeting. And I am honored to recognize Debbie for her appointment as a member of the Order of Canada, which took place on December 28th, 2023. And it is for her work in support of migrants and other marginalized communities. This is certainly a richly deserved honor, and it is the latest in a long series of well-deserved accolades and awards that she's received for her community service. And a quote from Debbie herself in a Toronto Star interview, she remarked that social justice is in her blood. Debbie has devoted her life, both professionally and personally, to advancing principles of equity and inclusion in the Canadian immigration system as a leader in policy and community activist. Her work highlights the issues of equity and anti-racism, gender, economic class, and sexual orientation in the immigration system, largely through her role as the Executive Director of the Ontario Council of Agencies Serving Immigrants. TCHC and our community benefits from Debbie's expertise and her passion. And I know I speak on behalf of all of the board members when I say that it is an honor to serve with you on the TCHC board, and I know that everyone at TCHC is grateful for everything that you do and have done and will continue to do for Canada, and you're making it a better place for all Canadians. So I would like to thank you. And with this in mind, I would like to share a very small token, and I mean small, but it's very meaningful. So I would like to share a token of our gratitude and admiration and recognize Debbie for her outstanding achievements becoming a member of the Order of Canada.
Thank you all for this.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you'd like to say anything, you're welcome to say something.
Thank you all for this. I am not sure what else I can say. I was very surprised when I received the call, but I appreciate.
We weren't.
Thanks for that. I appreciate the recognition and the opportunity for a larger platform to continue to raise some of these issues. Immigration, as you know, continues to be a key public policy priority for us as a country, especially now. And so glad to be able to play a small part in ensuring that we continue to build a Canada where everyone is welcome and supported. So thank you all.
So I've got to get my papers organized so I know where I'm moving on to next. So I would also like to share, I hope everyone has already heard, that we have exciting news. And we announced that Sean Baird is the new president and CEO of TCHC. And I hope everyone had the opportunity to see the announcements as it came through several different communication channels. So I hope everyone is aware. Sean's expertise and his background in the housing and social services sectors distinguished him as a truly transformational leader with the skills to guide TCHC into the future. In addition to a strong track record as a public sector executive, Sean has a he's passionate perspective on social service delivery. His approach is underpinned by an understanding of why we must bring greater empathy, value, and accountability to the public sector. Sean is joining TCHC at a pivotal moment in its history. The organization is committed to drive the transformation and enhancement of tenant service delivery while preparing to support Mayor Chow and the City of Toronto in the planned expansion of affordable housing in Toronto. And I'm particularly grateful to the selection committee for their diligence in the search for the right leader. Directors Cressy, Douglas, Farah, Fletcher, Smith, and Mansour reviewed a highly qualified group of candidates, finding Sean to bring all the qualities and experience that the board believes TCHC needs in the next leader. We certainly want Sean to be successful in this role, and he will be assuming his position on April the 2nd. And I'm confident that he will engage with the talent and passion of the TCHC team, and he will lead the organization in this next exciting chapter. And as I announce that exciting news, we will finish another position. Tom Hunter has been our interim president and CEO since August of 2023. And not only has Tom been an engaged and empathetic leader, he brought a wealth of knowledge from the social housing sector that TCHC certainly benefited from. I know that filling an interim role is not an easy job, and TCHC benefited from the fact that Tom came from the seniors, a close partner of ours, and he came with significant knowledge about TCHC and a working knowledge with ELT and great awareness of the issues that TCHC was facing. So today's board meeting is your last board meeting in the role of president and CEO, and Tom will be returning to seniors housing on April the 8th. And I know I speak on behalf of the board when I say that we have certainly enjoyed working with you, Tom, and have great respect for your leadership of TCHC and seniors. And I know that it's been a hard road. You worked very hard on the budget. You came through when we were starting with the city on the 65,000 new units. It's been a lot of work, and we appreciate everything that you've done for us. We count ourselves lucky because we now know that we have a good friend and a supporter at seniors housing, that we can rely on you in the future. And I know that you will be a huge help to Sean as he transitions into the role. So on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you very much, Tom, for everything that you've done for TCHC since August. And I would like to thank you for your support for Sean. And I would also like to thank the board and staff of seniors housing. And they permitted us to engage Tom in this role, which was really important to us, and we really appreciate their support of TCHC. So I would like to extend a thank you to Senior Housing Board. So good luck. We'll be working together. So thank you. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but if there's anything that you would like to say, given that this is your last board meeting?
Yes, through the chair, most people know that I'm really never short of words. And so it really, I have been so fortunate to spend this time. And, for me, life is about moments. Those moments that you experience, and there was a lot of moments at Toronto Community Housing, and a lot of experience, and truly, for me, in the point in my career, there was still, for me, it was exciting, the learning that I received that with the time at Toronto Community Housing, and working with the leadership team, incredible passion and focus and skill in helping to move and lead this organization forward. Thank you to the board and the work with the committees. Really, it's appreciative with that support that I received from all of you, and encouragement. And yes, you will have an ally at Toronto Seniors now, and really committed to the success of both organizations. Thank you.
So the last item I'd like to recognize is that February is Black History Month, and TCHC staff celebrate this period with several City of Toronto and TCHC-led events. On February 21st, I'm looking forward to attending an event organized by TCHC's Black Staff Caucus. And the focus of the event is the end of the United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent, and the work that continues to be required to further what was accomplished in those 10 years. The event includes a panel discussion, which will feature our colleague, Director Douglas. And I'm certainly looking forward to the dialogue and the opportunity to engage in this critical program. So later in the meeting, we will also receive an update from TCHC's Centre for the Advancement of the Interests of Black People in relation to TCHC's efforts in furthering its Confronting Anti-Black Racism strategy. And so we look forward to hearing from Barry later on in the meeting. So that concludes my opening remarks, and I appreciate your time. So I would like to now move on to the agenda, and could I ask if there are any additions or deletions to today's agenda as presented? Okay, hearing none. Could I ask if there are any items that the board would like to pull for further discussion? We do have deputations on items 11A, 12A, 13B. We do have a guest for item number 9, and as I mentioned, Barry will be presenting item number 10. So could I ask if there are any requests to pull any other items? John?
Sorry, you did say we're holding item number 9, correct?
Yes, number 9, we have a guest, but we have our guests. They're here.
I have a question on the briefing note on number 5 on the business arising.
Number 5. Okay. I would like to pull number 6 just to further the discussion that took place in the in-camera. I had a question on number 8. And I think I would like C, wait just a second, 12, is it 12C? 11C. Oh, is this, yeah, 12, and 12B. Are there any other items? Okay, can I ask if there are any conflicts of interest as it relates to the items on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Nick, thank you. John, thank you. Okay, so we will move to the first item, which is item number 5. Was it? No, I didn't. I think it was John. Yeah. Yeah.
So my question is, as we try to formulate this policy in regard to procurement, have we looked at the practices of Toronto Hydro, Toronto Water, the TTC, the City of Toronto, Exhibition Place, some of the other city agencies, to see what they do?
Through the chair, thanks the Director Campbell for your question. Yes, we have done environmental scan and also look at especially the City of Toronto's social procurement policy.
And so why are we hiring an outside law firm to help us with this?
That's as part of our overall procurement policy review and revamp. Our current procurement policy was last updated in 2014. So obviously, from 2014 till now, legislative environment and also regulations have changed. So the social procurement program policy is just a small part of that scope of work.
So the purpose of this exercise is to place an equity lens on all procurement practices. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So then why can't we just do, instead of hiring, I imagine we went through an RFP to hire the law firm?
I've gone through given the dollar threshold, we've gone through a request for quotation process.
And so why are we doing that when we could just come back to the board and recommend a policy, that staff feels is suitable, that's already been undertaken by one of our many other boards and agencies as well as the city? It sounds like we're going through the whole process when many other city agencies, and including the city, have already done this.
TCHC's procurement activities are unique in some instances. Especially we have a very strong focus on our facility retrofit requirements to deliver the SOGR capital repair program.
But
we also have a development division engaged in the revitalization. Those are not necessarily overarching or inclusive in some of the city divisions' procurement policy.
But
so that's the reason.
I wholeheartedly disagree with this approach, because a procurement policy is general in nature. And so I don't believe that the procurement policies that we undertake are in any great measure different than what the TTC might, for example, undertake in some of the work, the capital work that they do. So I'm just going to state my strong objection to this approach, because it's spending more money in what I believe, my personal belief, unnecessarily.
There are also, thank you for that comment. There are also considerations in terms of compliance requirements of the treaties.
I think, Tom, did you want to? I thought I saw your hand up.
Through the chair to the director, and my comments are more general around this procurement in terms of kind of Lily's discussions with myself or members of the senior team. When we look at aspects, and it's coming up in the EY financial sustainability plan, one of the key areas of focus for our organization is procurement and the opportunities that exist around procurement for not only an improved process, but also kind of efficiencies in terms of how we're contracting and awarding those contracts. And it's millions that they have identified. I think it's up to potentially potential through our analytics and procurement improvement processes, there's the potential for 25 million. And so, you know, in Lily's discussion with us, I think it's about ensuring that we have those best practices around procurement, you know, and I've heard around this table before, are we making calls to contractors who aren't qualifying as we should be? And, you know, are we involving enough vendors in the process? And there's all these elements of our procurement process where I've heard kind of questions around, I would say, almost the integrity of it. And so this is an opportunity to holistically look at the procurement and best practices, and as well, and ultimately improve processes and efficiencies.
And so to that, I would say that those obligations also reside with the TTC, the City of Toronto, Toronto Hydro, and Toronto Water. That's all.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comments on this? So can I have a motion?
Just
Oh,
one comment
sorry,
to
Debbie.
John's point then, that we hope that the law firm you've hired will take a look at existing equity vendor policies that the city already has, including the one that was developed a number of years ago by Social Development and Financial Administration.
Through the chair, that's correct. Yeah.
Your hand up? Oh, okay. So can I have a motion to receive? Nick? Debbie? Seconder? Thank you. All in favor? Perfect. Item number 6 is the board director's attendance at board. And I think Dara has a comment he would like to make, and that's why I pulled this.
Yeah, so just for context, one of the concerns that gets raised with the regular appearance of this report is, is the board provided information that informs the decision that they're being asked to consider at this time, which is essentially to approve absences by directors who are absent. And if the board is simply asked on a regular basis to approve the recommendations in the report like this without additional information, is there the opportunity that the board will miss issues that need to be addressed in terms of director attendance? So we did hear in follow-up with the discussions that we've had with the board chair, that concern expressed. So the plan that we propose to implement in conjunction with this report is that we'll provide the board chair on a quarterly basis with more detailed information around director attendance, so that if there is a perception that there is an issue with an individual director's ability to attend board and committee meetings on a regular basis, those issues can be addressed in conjunction with this report. We present the report for the board's consideration. It's a general report that essentially asks the board to approve the absences in a manner that doesn't highlight any particular director's attendance, but we'll put in place corresponding mechanisms to make sure that the board chair is able to identify those issues where they need to be addressed in a more personal manner. To the specific question that I think gave rise to, was raised in December about, is the report intended to address simply absence of board meetings, or is it board and committee meetings considered together? We've added some language in the report that clarifies that it's the latter case. That it's not just if you've missed if a director has missed 3 consecutive board meetings, which could occur over a 6-month period. It's the combination of board and committee meetings, and the intention there is to ensure that where there's an issue identified, it gets identified earlier before it becomes a more significant matter. And if there is a need for discussion between the board chair and individual directors around attendance, they can take place at an early stage before it becomes more problematic.
So there are comments, because I know, Nick, you were the one that.
I was going to say, going faintly by memory, I think I'm the one that constantly brings this up. Like, I just don't
Yes.
understand why we approve this. And if someone misses 3 consecutive meetings, and there's like lots of carve outs here, like if it's justifiable, if the chair says it's all right, so there's like 3 unjustified misses without the chair being sort of approving. As I read it, I'm not sure why we're approving that, why we're blessing someone missing 3 meetings. Because I think there's some carve outs here. So I'm just not sure why we're like, there's a reason why that policy exists, is you've got to show up to board meetings
Yes.
and committee meetings, so, and then I guess I'd raise, like, what happens if we don't approve this? Does anything happen?
Dara?
So if the board doesn't approve the recommendation in the report, and the report is simply presented to the board for its consideration, and the board isn't required to accept the recommendation in the report, may decide that it will not approve the absences that have occurred. So we put the matter on the agenda to provide the board with that opportunity, but in accordance with the city's shareholder direction, directors who miss 3 consecutive meetings are to, TCHC management is to report that situation to the city so that the city can consider whether it should be taking action to address that situation, which may include the removal of a director from the board.
Or may not?
May, yes, correct.
I don't know, this seems like, I don't know why we're blessing something that has there's lots of outs and solutions before it gets to the stage of someone getting theoretically kicked off the board. So to me, this sort of, it reads as like we're just approving any past transgressions without really knowing if there are any or not.
And that was the concern, is that you don't know if you're approving a repeat offender or if it's like one person, different person each time.
For anyone, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why it will come to me.
Yeah.
Or the board chair, so that if there's a pattern, it will be recognized and dealt with. So we were trying to, Dara was trying to deal with it that way. If you have other recommendations, because I know we deferred this report. I think it was at the.
I guess from my perspective, if we don't approve this and someone misses a bunch of meetings, something has to happen.
Yes.
Which I'm in favor of.
Yes.
So I'm not seeing the benefit of approving this personally. And maybe I'm not sure if I'm alone on that, but I'm just not seeing what benefit we're creating by approving this, like, sort of.
Well, I think if my understanding, and Dara can jump in, is if we approve the absence, it doesn't count as an absence. So if.
Why shouldn't it count? Like, I guess.
Going to defer to Dara.
And maybe it's like maybe it's a personal issue or what have you with the specific person, but then I think that should be dealt with outside of this and not sort of blanket sort of approval.
Again, the intention of putting it on the board's agenda is simply to allow the board to have this discussion. And if the board, if the board's direction is that it does not wish to approve these absences and wishes to have management report directors who fall into a circumstance where they've missed 3 consecutive meetings, we can certainly, in consultation with the board chair, I would suggest, take that action so that we can address it. This does not compel the board to approve these absences. It's simply before the board so that the board can give consideration as to what action it wants.
If the process is that the manager then, has a conversation with the chair and then sort of appropriate action is taken or not taken, to me, that's the right process and not sort of a retroactive approval by the board of past absences without sort of any context or what have you. That's my perspective.
So perhaps that may be the function, that may be the consequence of the corresponding mechanism that we are going to have in place, through which we do have that conversation with the board chair about directors who are in a position where they've missed multiple meetings, so that if there are those specific circumstances where there needs to be that type of a further discussion with the director, it can take place. And that may inform the version of this report that comes back to the board at a later date.
Joe, did you have something you wanted to say? Sorry.
I mean, not particular. I don't really.
Sorry,
I think we're talking longer than we need to.
Yeah.
I think what we've said is that management's going to talk to the chair, and if there's a problem, the chair is going to deal with it.
Yep.
And therefore, we have a decision: do we keep this report on the agenda or not? But I think we've already talked about it longer than it's necessary. And so, frankly, if we don't want to have this item on the agenda going forward, I'm fine with it. But my only request is then let's do it and not talk about it next meeting, because I'm tired of talking about it. Seriously, it's, management's going to talk to the chair's going to act if necessary, vote against the report or request that the report's removed. One or the other, let's stop talking about it. Like one or the other.
Okay, I recommend that we defer it, because I have not received any information as to absences. This was something that,
So we're going to see it again?
no, I will receive the list of absences, and then we will, as Dara suggested, the form of report may change. And so let's leave it for this month, and we'll work on something else. That, and I think I will engage with you, Nick, to find out what exactly, so we don't have to keep dealing with it. Okay, so we're going to defer this
Can I just ask a
item.
question on what the objective is, like, for this?
It's to approve so that it doesn't count on their record as far as,
And I understand the practice. So you basically excuse someone until you don't, right?
yes.
So what's the point to a report here related to that? Like if an absence becomes an issue, i.e. a person is no longer able to fulfill the duties of a board member, or they've decided to move on and they're not going to be attending, and they should formally be replaced, you would assume that most members would, send in a sort of a letter saying, look, please replace me because I won't be able to attend anymore. But if somebody is just kind of like, does it as a matter of course, then we have the ability to say after, a number of meetings, well, we're not going to excuse this person anymore, and then they're subject to the rules per se. But why a report? I've never seen a report of this nature talking about absences to the board.
I'm going to have to defer to Dara, and we're still talking about it.
What?
I think all I would say is, I mean, it's the intention of the report was that we don't put individual board members in a situation in which their attendance has not been brought to their attention in a manner that results in management needing to report to the city that somebody's missed 3 meetings and the city should, without notice to the director, consider what action should be taken, which may include removal from the board. But I think the message that I'm hearing from the board is that further consultation with the board chair and other members of the board should take place before this report comes back to the board, and so we'll follow that direction.
Okay.
So so I would just like to move receipt of the report. We have to move, we have
I
to
was
do.
just going to defer the whole thing.
Oh, just defer it? Okay.
Yes, not deal with it at all. So we're deferring this item, and it may or may not come back in a different form. Item number 8, I pulled that, just that we approve it as amended, as discussed in the in-camera session. I think that that's all we have to do here, Dara? Okay. So there are amendments to the work plans that will come forward, and Dara will provide those at a future meeting. So we have to approve these? Yeah. So can I have a motion to approve? Debbie, Narum seconder, all in favor? Thank you. As amended, we are going to move on to item number 9, and we have guests today. So, Mark, do you want to? Oh, sorry. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Before you, Tom's going to introduce you.
Through the chair. Good morning, everyone. I would just like to take this opportunity to introduce the EY team who led the financial sustainability study. We have with us Mark McDonald, engagement partner, and Ashley Chelinor, engagement lead. And TCHC, in collaboration with the City of Toronto and Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation, jointly developed the scope of work for the study and engaged EY to produce the independent advice. And really just quickly kind of capturing, and you'll hear certainly more about this in the presentation around the analysis, it defines the sustainability for TCHC through its 3 pillars: financial, operational, and community. And you know, in the report, it found that TCHC experiences the structural funding challenges, and really we're facing a cumulative 1.9 billion cost pressure over the next 10 years to maintain just our current level of service. And it was very clear in requiring a new approach in funding, and it identified a series of opportunities that could reduce costs over time and benefit the delivery of our services. During the 2024 budget cycle, Toronto Community Housing, Toronto Seniors, and the city worked collectively in exploring these opportunities and will continue to drive efficiencies through the multi-year planning and bridging strategies that are presented in the report. And now I would like to turn the floor over to Mark and Ashley. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And Chair and directors, through you to to yourselves, to members of the community, to members of staff. Thank you for the opportunity to come and share the results and part of the narrative and the journey that resulted in this analysis. What we'll do, and Ashley and I both will make the presentation, is that we'll hit on the highlights for you. To the extent that you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. We are here for a conversation and a discussion to make sure that you have the highest value out of this work. So as the Chief Executive has just said, the project itself, if we go to the next page there, please. The project itself it started, but it was as a pretty direct examination of the financial performance of TCH over a number of historical years, as the purpose to establish a base to forecast that expected financial performance over the following 10 years, as a means to identify opportunities for sustainability, any adjustments, any opportunities to try and pursue productivity gain, efficiency, and so on, but really at its core to establish a sustainable future for TCH and TSH as part of both your shareholders and your management team's responsibilities to try and make sure that TCHC in its broad definition is providing the necessary services to community. So we understand the analysis, as was just indicated, formed part of, and perhaps an important part of, the recent budget deliberations at the city. And we won't go into the details, but certainly some additional investments have been made, and as we understand it, in part off the basis of some of this analysis. So it is always a positive experience to have contributed, at least in part, to some enhancements to such an important institution. Ashley.
So I do want to, if you can go to the next slide, as a frame for this discussion, clarify what we mean when we say sustainability, because it's certainly a word that has many different meanings. But to our mind, we are thinking about this in the context not merely of TCHC as a municipal corporation, but TCHC as a social housing provider. And so that certainly requires financial sustainability as kind of a foundational piece, ensuring that there's reliable and consistent funding that reflects TCHC's obligations and its ability to fulfill those obligations. But there's also two other components that we thought were very important to TCHC's overall sustainability and its ability to deliver. So the next is operational, efficient and effective management of certainly its housing stock, but also its tenants, and management to an agreed standard, one that's aligned certainly with its service manager obligations, legislative obligations, but also the shareholders' expectations for TCHC and how TCHC operates in that larger context of the City of Toronto. And then finally, but no less important, is community sustainability. Access to adequate housing is the baseline, but certainly also being able to provide related to supports to achieve stability and positive life outcomes for its tenants is critically important, and one that is affects its operational and its financial stability, as well as the way those two things affect community sustainability as well. Overall sustainability means TCHC's ability to deliver against its mandate and be an effective pillar in that larger housing ecosystem in the City of Toronto. Next slide.
So what did we do? I mentioned that the starting position really was a financial analysis based on some historical evidence, but then forecast into the future. It was comprehensive across both the operating and the capital sides of your corporation. And it, as Ashley has just said, took a view that it is, while financial in nature, it is financial to achieve a mandate and to continue to deliver sustainable services, outputs, outcomes in the impact, not just from a corporate operational perspective, but to the core purpose, which is really the provision of heavily subsidized housing and to have proper attention to that impact. And again, as was indicated by Mr. Hunter, the evidence, I think, is fairly clear. I don't believe that it would be surprising to anybody, but that when we did this examination, we conducted it between March and May, the evidence is pretty clear that there is we called it a structural misalignment between the then forecast amount of support provided to TCH and the pressures that you face, TSH included, that you face in the pursuit of those sustainable outcome objectives. And that structural mismatch is significant and that it deserves quite consciously and appropriately to be addressed. And so what we did then was we essentially cast that in financial terms on the one hand, so the evidence base, but then also the prospect about how to make some adjustments. And the best way to consider that is really through what we have described and recommended through the work is an alternative approach to the actual core funding model. And as we get onto the next slide there, please, we can start to highlight, and we'll give you some more details here in a moment. But at its core, the recommendation really says to shift from a current funding model that is based largely on factors that are outside of the direct control of TCH and, in fact, the city, and to instead promote a funding model that is much more reflective of the things that drive the cost of service and drive the achievement of the sustainable outcome that everybody, by the way, every single person that we spoke to throughout the examination agrees the purpose and the expected level of service and outcome that TCHC must provide to the citizens of Toronto. What was in question is how do we achieve that through a sustainable funding model? And essentially, what we have said is stop relying on kind of the capricious nature of some of the external factors and instead focus quite squarely on the things that actually determine your cost of service and the level of service being able to be provided through your capital program, through your operations to tenants. And what we were able to do is to forecast what, let's call it the pressures that remain in order to inform ultimately decision makers, including your shareholder, about what reasonably should be done into the future.
Yeah, next slide, please. Perfect. So to build on that idea, what we what we began to think about is a potential new approach to a funding model that is essentially a framework that drives efficient funding, effective funding, I should say, that drives performance and that drives accountability. So this is something where funding is more tightly linked to the drivers of TCHC's cost, as well as those shareholder expectations and priorities, bringing those things into better alignment through a funding model. What you're seeing on screen right now is our kind of pyramid of where we started thinking about TCHC's expenses and responsibilities. And this is kind of where where we started to build this new funding model as we understood TCHC from our analysis. So certainly most foundationally and most importantly, TCHC is expected to support its tenants. You'll see that at the base of the pyramid. The next level of cost incurred is operating and maintaining residential units. So we did analysis at that level of cost. And then, of course, is operating and maintaining residential buildings. That's the next layer of cost. Above that is operating and maintaining neighborhoods. Certainly, as you know, TCHC often has many buildings in a singular community, and so thinking about the requirements at that neighborhood or community level, outside of merely the buildings on their own. Then, of course, there's corporate, administrative, governance expenses and expectations, including strategic initiatives and priorities, be they coming from inside TCHC, the board, or the city. And then, of course, expenses and responsibilities related to capital projects, including revitalization. You can go to the next slide.
And we've got a couple of slides here, and there's a lot of information on them. But basically what it says is that you start with that structure. You put tenants at the heart of this. You are a housing services provider. Put tenants at the heart of that, and then draw the necessary components of the things that drive the cost in pursuit of the service levels and the outcomes that you are trying to achieve, and make that the basis for the future funding model. Now, that funding model has not yet been determined. I think everybody needs to acknowledge that there is still a considerable amount of work that needs to be done to achieve this. But at least in some conceptual outline, we at least believe that there is now a basis to engage that conversation, I think most appropriately with your shareholder, but to capture the factors that appropriately define the things that drive your costs, drive your outcomes, and as Ashley has said, can lead not only to a renewal of the necessary support to achieve sustainability, but also to do so in the context of improved accountability. And as we go to the next slide, it's essentially an addition, in particular, of some of the key performance indicators that could be tied quite directly to this new funding model. It would or could end up being a relationship that says we have a funding model, but that funding goes to try and achieve a series of performance outcomes that we all agree are in the interests of our tenants, in the interests of our communities, of our cities, and so forth. And it really is that interaction between the funding model on the one hand and the outcomes on the other that can also enhance a new accountability framework and leads, in part, to this notion of financial, operational, and community sustainability.
Next slide. So we see a series of potential benefits of this new approach, both in the immediate short term, but also in the longer term, and in alignment with broader priorities or ambitions that the city may have. So certainly a benefit to TCHC would be having funding tied to those expenses and expectations rather than external variables such as average market rate. That, of course, would deliver more predictable and consistent funding that TCHC is able to better influence through its operations and its performance. Certainly as well, funds that would be dedicated to implementing strategic priorities, again, whether they come from TCHC itself or the shareholder. Certainly increased transparency, particularly when it comes to costs and being able to align funding with costs and obligations. And as well, a funding model that we believe could be flexible enough to integrate more of those KPIs, outcomes-based assessments, and similar sorts of metrics, as you saw on the previous slide, that could, again, create that better alignment between what the city and TCHC are trying to achieve for its tenants, for the corporation itself, and for communities through a performance and accountability framework that has the power of funding and that ultimate budget incentive behind it. And of course, to our mind, this is all in pursuit of the original goal, which is that financial sustainability and stability. There's also benefits we see to the shareholder, to the City of Toronto. Certainly, we know that TCHC, even today, is the most cost-effective form of publicly funded housing in Toronto. And so it is very important to have that institution brought into a sustainable financial position. That's a key. TCHC, as we know, is a key pillar to the city's ability to provide housing, stable housing, safe and reliable housing for Toronto's most vulnerable populations, and we've seen that through the mayor's new plan. So having TCHC in that sustainable financial position is very critical for it to be able to deliver on what the city may have in store for it or have in mind for it with respect to ambitions to solving homelessness or bringing greater housing stability across the city. Certainly as well, getting to that nitty-gritty of the functioning, the operation of TCHC, the city would benefit from improved forecasting ability, improved predictability of cost, certainly increased transparency and accountability, reducing some of that negotiation or those unexpected expenses or asks that are a character of the current funding model. As well, the ability of TCHC to better align with and take action on the city's own priorities, to know that, if you have a new poverty reduction strategy or a cybersecurity strategy, to know that TCHC is in a position to act on that and to fulfill its obligations with respect to those new priorities. And again, the ability to link TCHC in future with other community and social service functions to better track, benchmark, and ultimately improve the socioeconomic outcomes of tenants and of Torontonians. So that's something that we think there's a massive opportunity here in doing that hard work of looking at the funding model, but setting up TCHC and setting up certainly the city as well for a potentially much more outcomes focused and productive way of managing these very serious needs. The next slide, please. So we've talked a lot about our thoughts on a proposed new approach to funding, but we wanted to make clear as well that we didn't forget the original brief, which was to take that deep dive look at TCHC, its finances and operations, and understand where it could itself be more efficient, perhaps reduce expenses, raise revenue, and otherwise operate in a more sustainable manner. And I won't go too deeply into all of these suggestions. And I know that some of them are currently being discussed and being worked on with the city, which is incredible to hear. We certainly see a huge opportunity to build on the home system that TCHC has already implemented to do more analytics work that can, again, better track where your money goes and how to get better value out of that money, procurement being a huge aspect of the benefits of using analytics. We saw opportunities to achieve lower natural gas costs or lower natural gas rates, as well as potentially water rates via the city. We saw opportunities to improve the behind-the-scenes management of arrears for financial, recording reasons, but also certainly with tenant needs and sensitivity to tenants in mind. We also had some kind of bigger ideas that we thought would align really nicely with TCHC, its obligations and its ambitions. Looking at alternative financing models such as social impact bonds, again, to bring that alignment of particular outcomes that TCHC or the city may want to achieve and bring in social financing to help meet those outcomes for the betterment of tenants. Similarly, exploring a tenant incentive scheme, which has had success in other countries to support community development and well-being, as well as simply some of the costs incurred to TCHC. We see an opportunity to update the development strategy, ensuring that TCHC, through its revitalization projects and others, gets the best advantage from the market as it is today. You own a lot of assets, and there's a lot of potential there to gain more from those assets. Similarly, we see opportunities for TCHC to partner with larger, more high-capacity service partners, nonprofits, and so on, in a way that can serve your entire community, not just in kind of one-off small initiative manners. And linked to that is a consideration for looking at a charitable foundation, which something that Ottawa Community Housing is experimenting with, and which could house some of these ideas of partnership strategies, social impact bonds, and so on to allow TCHC to deliver on outcomes while finding new sources of financing. Next slide. So very quickly, we did some initial thinking as to the impact on TCHC's finances of some of these internal ideas. Many of them, obviously a big caveat here, the exact revenue or savings or timeline may differ. It would depend on the parameters of the initiative, how and when it's scoped and implemented, and so many of these are not costed out. But overall, the picture here is that we see a lot of opportunity for TCH to find savings, both cash and non-cash. And see, even if not all of these options are pursued, there are certainly opportunities that we think could have a measurable impact in both the medium and long term on TCHC's finances. Next slide. Perfect.
Yeah, so there we are. Again, an examination through a financial lens to your future sustainability, and some pretty robust recommendations that still sit probably before you for consideration. So, Chair, through you, thank you to everyone.
Are there any questions for Tom or Mark or Ashley?
So after all this time and expense, your number one recommendation is that Toronto Water give us $15 million a year. And so I would ask, why was it necessary to bring in a consultant to tell us to get money from another city agency? That's my question.
It is only one of the recommendations. The second part of your question, I'll defer to management.
So it's just that, you know, this was a lot of time and expense. And, you know, I don't know why Toronto Water would agree to that, other than I know that Toronto Water has substantial financial resources. We could have gone to Toronto Hydro for that. But we, for some reason, you know, this is the number one recommendation that's supposed to, you know, ensure financial sustainability for Toronto community housing. And I, I have to say that I find it just a little bit disappointing in terms of a total outcome. And maybe you could tell me a little bit more about, you know, how, you know, the social impact bonds have worked in other municipalities.
Happy to. The nature of the model there is that for certain types of activity, you can find non-city sourced investment to fund activity that can lead and be consistent with the delivery of social benefits that are tied to your the community that you are managing, or that you are involved with. And when one is looking for opportunities to find new sources of potential capital investment and or operating investment, you don't always want that to drive back to your subsidy or to the revenue that is generated through rents. And that really is what the nature of that model is.
And so can you illustrate for me some municipalities that have made that work?
There are a number of examples, for instance, in the provision of employment services that are tied to such activity, where your tenants would be beneficiaries of access to greater achievement of economic participation that could allow them potentially to to essentially move up the RGI equation to a position where that can have direct impact for you as an operating entity, but also much more, or just as importantly, if not more so, opportunity for them as citizens and as employees and
so if we wanted to adopt this particular recommendation, can you cite some other municipal examples that we might, you know, look to emulate?
Well, the application is a common one in a number of jurisdictions. There are ample examples that exist from across the world, and I don't have that information sitting right here, but we'd be happy to engage in a more direct conversation with you about that for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Tom, I'd like you to speak to John's first point.
Through the chair to the director. I would just like to comment on where the leadership team has been focusing and what they saw as kind of the priority recommendations around the report. And certainly much of the information that was provided in the presentation around the funding model has been an area that we are and will continue to be very focused on in terms of, you know, what is that level of subsidy that reflects the needs of Toronto community housing, and as well was raised the wish, the desire of the shareholder as it relates to programs at Toronto community housing. And so even through this last budget process in Lily and the finance team and people's work with the city, there was a lot of work around the subsidy for 2024. And I would say that the EY Financial Sustainment Plan was very powerful in terms of this, the organizations coming to consensus around, you know, a $40 million add to our base budget. So I think that was a significant recommendation that was worked on out of the report. But also moving forward, when we look at areas such as the rapid rehousing initiative, or even around the tenant engagement approach with Toronto community housing, that is a conscious policy and strategy decision by the city that results in additional cost to Toronto community housing. And so those staff that we have in the buildings, whether it's in Toronto community to support families and youth programs, or whether it's in Toronto seniors to help people age in place, that requires resources, additional resources that other typical housing providers, don't have, that they don't have. And so I think it's really important, and what this report points out is we need to be building those budgets from those elements of our operations that affect our bottom line. So I think that's key. And I think the other second point that I would just like to make is around in the report around the efficiencies. So where can Toronto community housing be more efficient? And, I, once again, reflecting on the discussions with the city around our next 3 years, clearly the Chief Financial Officer, Steve Conforti, was very clear with Toronto Community Housing that, yes, there is enhanced subsidy to your base and one time, but you do need to be looking at efficiencies. And that's where this report helps to direct us around where that work needs to be to take place. So arrears could be a possible example of where we work, and that was raised in the report to be more efficient. So I just wanted to share with the board that from this report that it certainly has been providing direction for both TCHC, Toronto Seniors, and the city in terms of a sustainable organization for our community.
Parthy?
Thank you. I was, appreciative of the report, especially touching on important conversations we're having, including the potential behind efficiency through procurement opportunities. I was wondering if UI could expand and perhaps provide a little more structured detail to that comment.
Yeah, happy to. The nature there is, as by the way, that the city itself has had an extensive program to try and drive efficiency gain, real cash savings, but also the avoidance of future costs through the commodities, through the various nature of the goods and the services that you procure in the pursuit of the delivery of service. And there are some fairly significant opportunities that potentially exist.
I can provide an example. So, and this is related to the analytics recommendation and using homes more powerfully. So, linking the function that pulls in complaints or maintenance requests from tenants to what goods are being purchased. So understanding, for example, if we're receiving a number of complaints from their tenants that their stove isn't working, linking that back to the brand or the vendor and seeing where there may be a consistent or routine issue, and then being able to get in front of that issue or make better purchasing decisions in the future about the particular brand or the vendor that is used. Right now, that data isn't linked, and so that would be a way of better understanding, where certainly the money goes when you make purchases, but also the outcomes and the value you're getting for that money.
Gotcha. The second question, I was intrigued by the tenant incentive scheme. Do you have any examples of how that looks in other jurisdictions?
Yes, so this is something that's used largely in the UK by social housing providers, where they provide incentives to tenants to do a variety of things. So some of the incentives may be for things like on move out, ensuring that your unit is clean and in sufficient working order to based on what's under your responsibility. or it may be related to community activities. So providing tenants with incentives or support to create a community garden, for example. So these are schemes that you invest money in the tenants by providing them with an incentive or providing them with a reward or raffle ticket, something like that. But that through the incentives themselves, you actually create greater value, either because you're saving on, let's say, maintenance or cleaning costs, or you have a community that has greater well-being, and tenants are more engaged in the community itself. That's something that we've seen that a couple of examples in the UK with success, and so we think would be relevant here at TCHC.
Thank you. And lastly, the charitable foundation idea, are there examples? I'm sorry if I missed this in your presentation within Ontario, Canada.
Yes. So the example from Canada is primarily the Ottawa Community Housing Corporation. They founded a charitable foundation within the past couple of years, so they're still fairly early on in it. We see examples from other jurisdictions, but other jurisdictions have very different models of social housing ownership and financing, and so there isn't necessarily kind of a one-to-one, but we do see a lot of interest and engagement from that charitable perspective. Certainly donations, but also partnerships with larger organizations to raise funds or to engage in initiatives together. So we spoke to the Ottawa Community Housing Corporation, and we know that TCHC also has a relationship with them. So we're very interested in seeing how that evolves, as well as scoping that out in the Toronto market. Certainly TCH is much bigger than Ottawa, but Toronto is much bigger as well, and there's a fairly deep philanthropic base in the city that's worth investigating and engaging with.
Exactly. Thank you, Chair.
I certainly understand the efficiencies that we're looking at from the housing side of it, but I guess I wondered whether you parsed out all the additional requests and things that TCHC is doing from a tenant services and supports perspective, because in a way, I think many of those things should be funded through others. So if you're looking at health, community services, employment, immigrant services, all those areas that TCHC engages to a certain degree in should, in my view, be sourced through the appropriate other levels of government, rather than trying to roll it all into the requirements of trying to do it on the funding that TCHC gets from the city and its sources. So I guess, looking at other models is to say, maybe TCHC should have a Toronto Community Housing Community Services operation, which delivers support services to its tenants and gets funding from the appropriate levels of government, whether that be health or community services, employment, and so on. And that we're not trying to roll everything into one sort of one funding model. So I just really question whether you've parsed out those things that TCHC is doing and whether those could and should be funded in a more appropriate way, rather than it being demanded out of the existing resources we have.
Yeah, listen, it's a great question, and it kind of speaks to the detail about what needs to be developed in the recommended new funding model. What we didn't say in the presentation, and of course you have now highlighted, is that it doesn't always just have to be the same source of the funder to the activity that you are carrying out. And if there is a way to be much more explicit and clear about the relationship between the services that you are actually providing and the way that similar services are funded from, as you have said, other levels of government or from other sources of funding, from other budget allocations and so forth, then at the very least being more explicit about that likely leads to at least a better relationship between the requirement to provide the service, the source of that funding, and as we have said a number of times, potentially the performance and the accountability to continue to drive that into the future.
So I have a comment, not a question, and I think just for both colleagues on the board and management, and first, it's just a thank you to the management team for initiating this process and to EY for the work that's been done. And I would say really importantly that this was done in collaboration with our shareholder at the city. If we're going to start to look at a true financial analysis of our state, existing and future state, if we're doing that on our own without our shareholder, we're not going to be further ahead. And so this, I think that was a very wise approach, and I want to acknowledge that. For me, what this really, and I think I said some of this in the summer when we first had a session on this, crystallizes for me, is there's a $1.9 billion number over the next 10 years. And we are a public service, and what this report is there are not savings to be found to address that $1.9 billion gap. And there's not revenue to be found to address that $1.9 billion gap, though we have identified in the report some savings options and some revenue options. And so if I take a really step back, we are a public service. We provide social housing. If our objective was to drive a large surplus and profit, that would be otherwise, but we're not. This is a public service in the same way that transit is a public service. And so the situation we find ourselves in with this $1.9 billion is how do we put ourselves in the best position such that as a public service, governments are willing to fund us to deliver on our mandate. And that's the approach raised here to develop a new sustainable funding model that acknowledges the wider range of services we provide. To Brian's comments, I think that's really helpful. To build a new funding model, I think, which is very astute here, that drives greater accountability and outcomes on our part, is very astute, because if we're going to go to government and say, we need another $1.9 billion, the first thing they should ask is, A, have you demonstrated that you can't find greater efficiencies? Show us. And two, how are you going to deliver better outcomes if we're going to give you more money? So we need a funding model that does both, delivers better outcomes, but also demonstrates that we have done the efficiency check. And so, but let's not take away, like what this report says is, if we're going to provide this public service, we're not going to cut our way to it. In fact, that's going to harm our residents. So we need a new model of funding to deliver on it. And I think that's a very helpful North Star as we enter our strategic planning process.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you undertook this, I mean, I see the headline here, and I don't know. I'm new here, so I'm not sure how the approach works, but or worked. But you basically approached this review under sort of the current parameters, correct?
Yeah, yes, for the large part, absolutely.
It's not like you came in and you said, okay, look, let's look at, Toronto Community Housing and I don't know how many units we manage, 56, 57,000, something like that. And you didn't look at that and say, is this sustainable? Is the current model sustainable going forward? Or do we need to take a different approach to this question and provided advice on that? You didn't do that, right?
What I would say is that we certainly identified the risks to sustainability based on your current operations, and we have priced those risks, and they are reflective in the conversation here this morning. What we weren't asked to do was to redesign the policy framework that is asked of you by your shareholder. that was outside of scope.
So there's nothing here, I don't want to, pick up on something John was talking about. He was upset with you. I think he should have been upset with whoever undertook the study if he's upset with the study. But so there's nothing here from you that provides this board with any sort of new sense of direction other than sort of the status quo. Your funding model isn't right. You need access to more money and this is where we think you can get it. Other levels of government, City of Toronto's water program, et cetera, right?
Again, I would say to you that I think, through the chair, I think that what you have actually before you is a very precise understanding of the relationship between the things that drive your current cost, the level of service that you provide against that, the sources of funding, and the decisions that you might take in the face of that, and the implications of those decisions. It is absolutely the case that you have that information.
Okay, and I'm not familiar with your study, but do you do do you do a thorough review of the portfolio and sort of provide an analysis of what elements of the portfolio really sort of we need to focus in on that are driving sort of the funding inequity for us?
At a very, very detailed level.
Sorry?
At a very detailed level, yes.
Okay.
And I'm sure that management would be happy to share that with you. I'm certain of it.
Okay. Thank you.
I think one of the highlights and takeaways from my perspective on this report, and I think this ties in with one of the future items on today's agenda, is the strategic planning process, is the fundamental funding model, and why are we tied to an average market rent funding model when that has nothing to do with our portfolio, and rent geared to income is a totally different style of or type of rental and affordability of housing. So as part of that strategic planning process, I think that has to be one of the foundational elements of what has to be achieved over the next number of years, is a sustainable funding model that's more aligned with what we're trying to achieve, but also how the underlying business works, as opposed to a model that's not aligned, and therefore every year there's a big surprise on why the funding doesn't match up and there's a huge gap. And so that, I don't know if this particular answer is the answer, but I think it highlights the question. And as part of the strategic planning process going forward, it should be a foundational element. Thanks.
Relative to our specific assets there was a discussion about a second phase to this study as it relates to our specific capital assets and the state of our portfolio. I'm just further to
that is
Councillor.
correct. It has
Yes.
yet to be initiated, but yes.
Yes, and it hasn't been initiated, but that was discussed at the very beginning when we engaged them, that would be a second. We have not engaged them, but that was the intent, that there would be a second phase. So are there any other comments or questions for Ashley, Tom, Mark? So I would like to thank you very much for your time, and to reiterate what Tom had to say and what Joe and Nick have to say. We do see great value in the work that you've done, and it was a key component of our '24 budgeting exercise, and I know that it's a key component of our future financial planning, and it has provided us with great direction. And I think what is most important, because you worked with the city, it has provided us with good discussion points as we move forward, because they are our shareholder and our chief funding source. So we do see great value in the work that you've provided, and certainly would like to thank you for your time today and for the several months that you spent preparing the report. Thank you.
Thank you for those kind words, and yeah,
Our pleasure.
absolutely.
Okay, so can I have a motion to receive the report? Joe? Nick? Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. So thanks very much for your time. We will move on to item number 10. Confronting Anti-Black Racism Strategy Update, and I will ask Barry, our acting director of the CABR. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Madam Chair.
Sorry, is your mic on?
Yes, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you speak
Can you
into
hear
it?
me?
Thank you.
So again, good afternoon, Chair, and through the chair and to all the members. It's nice to see you all, and it's my pleasure to present the second report for the Center for Advancing the Interest of Black People. This is the Year 2 update.
I have to say it's very appropriate that you're here in February.
Yes, yes, it is. I'll get through the report. The Center is responsible for providing subject matter expertise to Toronto Community Housing, Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation leadership, and the corporate divisions on the implementation of TCHC's CABR strategy and interdivisional action plan. The presentation is going to be shared. I'm just waiting for it.
Technology is so great when it works. Can you start your presentation?
Yeah, I'll keep
We'll just
going.
see how Sonia's doing.
Yeah. Through the CABR strategy's 8-point plan, the action plan outlines 32 activities for 2023 to be achieved through collaborative efforts across TCHC. As of December 2023, 9 items were completed, 14 were currently in progress, 3 were in planning, and 4 have not started. 3 actions were revised. The 8-point plan includes the following focus areas. So I'm on page 2 now. 1, addressing anti-Black racism and cultural regress. 2, healthy children, youth, and families. 3, meaningful economic opportunities. 4, community-centered safety and wellness. 5, divesting from police culture. 6, decent and fair housing. 7, access to cultural responsible health and mental health services. 8, uplifting social support networks. Year 2 action plan, 4,746 hours of CABR training were delivered across 795 staff to build competency in confronting anti-Black racism, ABR, and supporting tenants. 477 tenants were educated and engaged over 10 workshops delivered in 15 communities to enhance capacity building for community leaders to support their communities. 219 hours in coaching and planning support across all TCHC divisions and business units, working to integrate cable lenses into planning, creation, execution, and assessment of policies, services, and delivery practices and projects. 630 tenants supported through 12 collaborative community-based initiatives. We also re-established a Black Tenant Advisory Committee, which is about to start meeting shortly, and a staff advisory board is in the works. Employee training and development in CABR. The CABR strategy outlines 2,100 staff should be trained, totaling 12,000 hours, which was before Toronto Seniors Corporation became a separate entity. So far, 6,324 hours of training were delivered across TCHC and TCHC, 4,746 hours which were delivered to TCHC and staff leaders. 1,054 staff were trained, just a little over half the staff across TCHC, and 795 were TCHC staff and staff leaders. In assessment surveys, 97% of participants indicated in the post-training survey that they could explain anti-Black racism. 79% stated that they would use the knowledge to improve customer service. In addition, we procured Diversity Pro in collaboration with People and Culture to work with the ELT to develop a roadmap and deliver EDI and CABR strategies, specifically with the executive leadership team. Okay, progress on the CABR strategy and action plan. Goal 1, we established a cross-functional project team to design, implement, and monitor the collection of disaggregated race-based data. We developed workflows and draft toolkits addressing anti-Black racism incidents in Operations Division. We created draft toolkits to support staff with recognizing incidents of ABR and developing policy and programs with a CABR lens. We developed partnerships through the Center's Lunch and Learn and Fireside Chat series with diverse Black scholars, public and private sector groups to enhance service delivery. Specifically, we did planning on children, youth, and families. We created targeted communications to Black tenants around new opportunities at TCHC. We implemented a cadet program for TCHC youth to help good citizenship, leadership, and life skills with the CSU. Goal 3, we supported Youth Works and TCHC internship programs by participating in hiring panels. 78 of 95 hires were Black identifying individuals. We participated in 3 mentorship sessions to enhance the skills of TCHC interns. We also collaborated with the Strategic Procurement Union and the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce and Community Benefits Network to spread awareness and gauge the interest of vendors to aid in delivering vendor procurement for cleaning and janitorial services. Goal 4, we developed a consultation plan, survey, and communications plan to complete a body-worn camera feasibility review. Goal 5, initiated the CSU mandate review in Q4 of 2023 and integrated the Black Employee Life Cycle Review into the work and the consultation and the consultants conducting the work are now underway. It should be reported out, or the report should be available somewhere at the end of Q3. Goal 6, decent and fair housing. We coordinated and hosted a tenant roundtable with Black leaders across 10 communities and Taibu Community Health Center mobile unit on mental health wellness. We also developed and delivered 10 workshops to 477 tenants in the areas of anti-oppression, emotional intelligence, systems navigation, trauma and practice, and confronting anti-Black racism. Goal 7, we conducted a mapping Black health and mental health service across TCHC regions and provided information on ABR and the center's available supports during workshop sessions for TCHC tenants. We developed a resource poster in collaboration with TCHC's Pride Network and Strategic Communications Division to support with outreach and engagement of TCHC's 2SLGBTQIA plus tenants, including health and wellness resources. We supported engagements and consultations with external stakeholders by providing ABR and social housing expertise. Goal 8, uplifting social networks supports. We worked with the Black Staff Caucus to identify their needs regarding the development of a Black mentorship program. And we developed a corporate-wide questionnaire that was approved to identify areas of interest, so staff engagement, improved support mechanisms to staff engagement to combat anti-Black racism. So in a nutshell, for the third year and final year of the center's mandate, the center will focus on the following initiatives. 1, completing the ABR action plan. Through that process, improving the customer service experience for Black tenants, who are approximately 40% of the tenant population. We will create partnerships with community-serving stakeholders to build capacity of communities and offer support and resources. And the big work beginning this year, we will be presenting an analysis and impact of the 3-year strategy in our report for TCHC next year. Thank you. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to
There's
answer.
certainly a lot of important work being done by CABR, so does anyone have any questions or comments that they, Debbie? And then I think John.
For the report, Barry, it's good to see things coming together. 2 comments, actually. The first comment, actually 1 comment and a question. It's good to see, there's a feeling that the center is finally being integrated. What are we doing with Neptune 4?
So I actually sent you an email to request that you and I meet about
Okay.
Neptune 4, because I know it has gone around and around in the committees, and I think it's been at Tenant Services, it's been at GCHRC, and yes, I would like it to come to the board. I tried to engage with Paula on a number of occasions, and then Paula Fletcher asked me to speak to you. So while you were away, I did send you an email to ask if we could set up a meeting so that we can bring this to the board, because it needs to be addressed.
Good, so I'll follow up with you.
Yes.
Okay,
So
thank you.
I know you were on holidays, and so I didn't push the response. But yes, it's very important that it comes to the board.
Good. Good work, Barry.
I think, John, did you not have a comment?
Yes, so thank you for the update and the report. You said, I think you said 40% of tenants identify as Black? Was that high? And so one thing that I think is kind of encouraging, you say 79% stated they would use their new knowledge or their gained knowledge to improve customer service. And so, and then you said you'd be reporting back next year. So will part of your reporting back be on those interactions of customer service and how people feel differently about Toronto community housing?
Yes, absolutely. And to just amplify the statistics that you were referring to, that came from SPCR, who did a tenant survey in 2022. It's 40% across the board, but in East and West regions, the actual number that they reported out was 56%.
Identify as Black, I see. And of those tenants, do we know percentages about how they feel about how they're treated?
That
Or
is-
experiencing racism or what have you?
That is the deep work we're going to this year.
Okay, so we don't really know right now
We have anecdotal.
how many are,
Through the chair, sorry.
sorry, do we have a sense as to how, what percentage of tenants feel that they're not being, respectfully treated?
No, we don't have direct number.
Ada?
We can do that analysis and we can pull that data. So Barry will support with that.
And so there's a lot of training that's been done. How long are the sessions?
It's through the chair, it's a full-day session. And through last year, we really got up to speed and really working, got the training program up to speed in a consistent way. And so one way of describing it is that we talk about anti-Black racism 101, which is the nomenclature, the way to identify it and how to apply the lens. And we did the training by staff group. The training this year continues in the 101 level, but we're also going to a deeper kind of training where it's interdivisional training or issue-based training where we are training staff deeper. So specifically, we are talking about our call center where there's a need to do, they have requested and we are now working on a deeper training session with the call center who represent the front door of TCHC. So we're going to do another kind of training with them in addition to the
And who does the training?
We have a training coordinator who works in the center.
Is that a TCHC employee?
A TCHC employee.
So it's not an outside agency?
No,
Okay, that's
Zora Adatia, who works in the center. As the need arises, we will either collaborate with other TCHC staff and use the opportunity to get consultants as needed.
And then last question, how many staff identify as Black?
Those numbers I can only guess at.
Throw me a guess.
In the range.
We have about 2,100 staff.
Yes, in the range of 150, possibly 200 at this range, but these are guesses.
Okay. And what's your annual budget?
Annual budget is around 1.2 million.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Brian, please go ahead. I think you're on mute, Brian.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to ask when appropriate and either with existing training, certainly would appreciate some training for myself or board members and when not wanting to add to your workload, but would look forward to any opportunity that you could provide to board members.
I know, I think it was probably more than a year ago now that some board members, I know I was in a small group, I know John was in my group and Tim was in my group, there was training that was provided to board members. I don't know if that's something that's ongoing as the board changes.
There has been discussion, and yes, from my perspective, I would recommend and suggest that there is a need, just in terms of the ongoing changing environment, dynamic and demographics that we are confronting. The ELT and management team is well positioned to comment to you specifically further on that, because the group that we've used, DiversiPro, have and is doing some significant work with the executive leadership team, so you can get a direct comment. And one of the comments I got back from the trainer is that our new incoming CEO also went through the training about 18 months ago. So we are happy to do some for the board. We are happy to recommend what is best for the board, and I'm happy to work with the ELT to address that.
Okay, well, we would appreciate that. As Brian's indicated, he would like to participate. Are there any other, Debbie, sorry.
I forgot to ask this question. I noticed that most of the various divisions or departments within TCHC have gone through the training except for CSU. What's happening there?
Yes, we are getting ready to do the CSU training because they are obviously a unique and specialized unit, and it's also because of their shift works. Last year, we were ramping up and pushing numbers through. We are working on getting the CSU through training this year.
And Ada, I've been asking for those demographic stats since 2019. It would be great to know who works at TCHC.
Okay. We'll note that as well for a follow-up.
Okay. Uba?
Thank you. And this is a great report. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to see all these great things going to be done. And when we're training people, tenants, are they part of it? And are we also providing those trainings in multiple languages so everybody can take part in that? And also, when we're training board members, I would like to be part of that as well.
Excuse me, I missed the last part, Uba.
She would also like to be part of the board training. I think that's Uba? Yes. That's what, yes.
Yeah. We have 3 people on staff whose titles are tenant training facilitators. They are in the process of, they are capable and have the ability and have focused on some training, and that's mentioned in the report, and it's going to go further and broader this year. We are reestablishing, I've noted, the tenant advisory board, which took some time to get reestablished, and they will also be coming out to the board and communicating through the board and communicating with tenants to involve more specific tenant training issues and anti-Black racism tenant training in specific. That is an area that we're going to focus on more. Last year, our focus primarily was inside the organization and building capacity amongst the staff to address this. We are slowly moving to the next step, which is engaging tenants, because that is a much bigger job.
Marcel?
Yeah, well, thanks, Barry, for this, and I too would like to be part of the training. I think it'd be really good for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my understanding when I took the training was that it was offered to everyone, but clearly a number of board members who have been on the board for a number of years did not participate. So I would appreciate, Barry, if you could come back to us.
Yes.
And we certainly, there's a number of people who have expressed interest. So I think there's great value in that. So if there are no other questions for Barry, okay, hearing none, I would like to thank you very much for your time and really appreciate the important work that you're doing at TCHC and that it's integrated into TCHC. I think that that's the most valuable way to approach this. So can I have a motion to receive Barry's report? Debbie, thank you. Nick, seconder, all in favor? Perfect. Thank you, Barry. So we will move on to item 11A. And Dara, we have a deputant, so could you speak to that?
So we've got 2 deputants. The first deputant is Chad Hamad. And just a reminder for deputants that the purpose of the deputation process is for you to provide information to the board relevant to the matter that's on the agenda. So if you can keep focused in your comments on the agenda, you'll have 5 minutes for your deputation. And we just want to make sure that we don't have to to shut you down if you're getting into areas that aren't related to the agenda.
Okay, Mr.
Docket here.
Welcome, Mr. Ahmad.
Thank
And
you.
we are now on item 11A, urgently building more affordable homes, TCHC's next steps.
So I'm here today to try to start a conversation, if it hasn't already, in regards to urgently building housing for people with certain type of disabilities like mine. What I'd like to discuss is the matter of finding a way for TCHC to build smoke, scent, and sound-free buildings with people with my type of disabilities. I'm having a problem right now with Toronto Community Housing trying to locate adequate housing for someone like me. This is my second medical critical priority transfer within a year with Toronto Community Housing, and it's a big problem trying to figure out where to house me due to my disabilities. I've been waiting 2 months now, and I'm truly suffering from this. There are many people with the same disabilities that are having the same problems who can also use this type of housing urgently. Like the region of York, they have buildings set aside for smoke and scent-free buildings for people with these type of disabilities. On the Toronto subsidized waiting list, there's 14 buildings that are smoke-free buildings, which are co-op type buildings that are very hard to get into and can only be obtained through the subsidized waiting list. TCHC is not able to pull these and just give to anybody who desperately needs this type of accommodation unless TCHC changes their RGI. But what difference does it make? There's no availability. As they are co-op type buildings and only set a few apartments aside in their buildings for TCHC residents. Even the newer buildings today being built, you can't even get into. On this medical critical priority transfer, I've been transferred to an apartment which I've been sitting beside the GO trains that are about 100 feet away that idle from 6 in the morning till 1 o'clock at night, with their engines running on a high idle and their diesel fumes just seeping into the apartment. I also have cigarette, weed, crack, smoke coming through the apartment vents and hallways of the apartment I'm currently in. I have plastic and tape around my doors, around my vents, trying to prevent this from seeping into the apartment with little to no luck. I've sent video footage of all this to Toronto Community Housing, so they're very aware of this situation. I ask, where do I go? Where do I retreat to? I'm on oxygen. I'm on my second critical priority transfer, as the first transfer were community barbecues underneath the apartment I was occupying. Same thing, smoke seeping through the apartment. TCHC has no idea where to put me, and I don't blame them. They're having a problem figuring and locating a suitable unit that fits my disabilities. Even my specialists and my doctors are mind-boggled with this. I'm here today to ask you guys to urgently build some homes or apartments for people with these type of disabilities. TCHC needs this. Needs to consider this when building new homes and building new properties. This is a serious problem for someone like me and others in the same situation with these type of disabilities. I sit in my apartment with my chest squeezed all day long, vertigo, dizziness, severe headaches on top of that. And now I've also developed hearing problems with ringing in both of my ears from the trains idling right beside me all day long. Why am I living like this? I have no enjoyment in life. I have nothing that makes me happy or smile anymore while I'm living in this apartment with pain every single day. That's why I'd figure I'd come here today, given this opportunity to voice my concerns in regards to this issue. But at the end of the day, someone needs to rethink this and build some homes or housing urgently with people with these type of disabilities. I suffer on a regular basis. Each and every one of you don't understand how much I suffer and how much other people are suffering in the same situation. I have a difficult time with this. I can just imagine other people in the same situation totally unable to do anything. I'm here to advocate for people like me, and I'm hoping you directors on the TCHC board will recognize people with these type of disabilities and urgently build some buildings for people like us. It's stunning that TCHC can't find a place that's going to be adequate for my type of disabilities in this day and age, especially with marijuana now being legal and being able to smoke in the apartments. We need these type of homes. That's it. That's what I got.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Questions? So I missed the first part of your deputation. How long have you been living where you're living?
I've been there 7 months, but I've been waiting 2 months on a critical transfer. It took that long in order to organize everything, to redo the paperwork.
And where were you before this place?
I was at Falstaff, and they have community barbecues right underneath me that they didn't pull them out. I asked if they can pull them out. They said no. And then 2 o'clock in the morning, they're barbecuing.
Oh, boy. And before that?
I wasn't in housing at that time.
Oh, I see. And so you got to this unit, and then you've made an application for a transfer.
Yes.
Right. And have you been told that's being expedited? They're working on it as quickly as they can?
But they just can't find anything.
And what is it that you need? Do you just need a basic bachelor or one bedroom?
A one-bedroom that's just smoke and sound free if can be.
Right. Okay. And I'm sorry, what's your disability?
I've been hit by a car, so I've had 7 surgeries in my neck. I've had a disc replacement, a lower back disc.
Oh, boy.
Cut and leaking. I'm also diagnosed with cluster headaches and cervicogenic headaches coming from my neck.
Is that from the crash?
Yes, so everything is from the crash, and then oxygen squeezing through my neck.
Yes.
Madam Chair, just to the extent that we're getting into personal.
This is a public meeting.
With respect to, in a meeting.
I don't mind answering. I have no problem with it. I don't mind answering.
Trying to show some, respect for the deputant, so best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. Thank you, ma'am.
We'll certainly take it under
appreciate
advisement.
it.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Oh, Marcel had a comment, and so does Brian. Sorry. Marcel and then Brian.
Okay, thank you. I don't know about soundproofing units, but what about those high density type air purifiers? Would those be helpful for the time being?
No, because it's coming through the vents, like smoke and crack and all that. So I have the vents covered up. I mean, at the end of the day, how would you even prevent that? Plus, you got the GO trains over that are about only 100 feet away, and their diesel fumes are just sucking right into the apartment. I mean, it would be really hard to even use one of those to get rid of it.
Oh,
Brian?
okay.
I just have a question to staff, whether there's any possibility to reach out to other nonprofits that may have those buildings that might have we're all partners in providing housing, and the question is, obviously to create this is going to take some time, but in the short run, while this gentleman is offering, are there other ways to address the issue through some sort of swap or partnership with an existing nonprofit that may have a scent-free, smoke-free environment?
So through the chair, I'll start and then I'll throw it to Lindsay Viets, our Director of Program Services, to speak to this. As the deputant has pointed out, we are doing our best within our existing stock to provide options, but we're having difficulty locating units that are scent and smoke-free. In terms of working with other partners, I will ask Lindsay to speak to that.
Yeah, through the chair, that's certainly a discussion that we can have with the service manager about how we would approach something like that. So we can definitely begin those conversations.
Are there any other questions?
Just a suggestion, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your time today,
Thank
guys. I
you for your
appreciate
time.
it. Thank you so much.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good day. And we'll move on to our second deputant.
Hit the timer again, please, so I know how many minutes I have left. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. David Douglas, congratulations on your nomination for the Canada. Congratulations. Barry, amazing presentation on anti-Black racism strategy. Maybe Marcel can make a motion so we can have also anti-Indigenous racism strategy, because we do have problems as well, discrimination. So, let's go to business. I spoke at BIFAC about many things, but one thing escaped my brain, which is, can I have something from the thing working this? And hold my time, please, maybe.
Sorry, what
I need to put something on this projector. Thank you. It's coming. I'm old school. I like to show things in visual so you guys can understand my concern. Is it on? I don't know. Can everybody see it? Well, just quickly, it's an article on the bridge. It's a community newspaper. On page 2, it's a story about 500 Dundas Street. You see, this is one of the priorities that we are perhaps allocated in the $11.7 billion budget approved yesterday by the city. We have allocated 6,500 RGI units. One of the desires of the community in Regent Park is to have the first indigenous co-op. We have conversations with Councillor Chris Moyes, who is aware of it, but he says we need the money. So I wonder, in this ambitious program that you guys are planning to develop in the next coming years, are you including the 500 Dundas Street property, which is being an empty property in the middle of the hood in Regent Park for the last 18 years without addressing our concerns? So, you know, in 2021, we discovered in conversation with Daniels Corporations and the Regent Park Neighborhood Association and myself and another indigenous person, that this facility can be turned into a land trust, in the first indigenous land trust in Toronto. So this is my concern as you approve whatever decision you make in this particular topic. The next item I want to talk is on page 7 of the report, where you discuss about future tenant engagement and opportunities to discover what our residents are looking for. One of the things I mentioned to you guys when you are designing future construction in development is to include CCTV cameras. Sadly, on phases 1 and 2, they forgot to install CCTV cameras on every floor of the TCHC building made by Daniels Corporation. And I brought this to the attention of the board many times. Again, I'm going to bring it to your attention again. We lost a child, Micaiah Jackson, in 2018. He was shot on the 9th floor, and there is no justice for this man because there's no cameras, no CCTV cameras. So one of the things I want to say is that John Krakovic announced to me at Regent Park Safety Network that he had put on the request for capital project to install CCTV cameras on phases 1, 2 that are missing. So my question to the board is, have you accepted this request from John Krakovic to add more CCTV cameras on phases 1 and 2 buildings? Because this is a big gap, my friends, about safety and security. And also, the last thing I want to say is, I have 1 minute, with regards to 220 Oak Street Tower Renewal Project. You guys approved in 2019, $30 million is my approximate amount to renovate 220 Oak Street. So far, they have provided us with 10% of that development, 10%. The rest has been put aside because legalities, finding a contract management company, et cetera, et cetera. The only concern I have is the money you guys calculated based on your estimates and the community building assessment is now easy, it's comprehensive to understand that in 2024, you will be able to complete those goals, which is the complete renewal of the building. Because prices have gone up, it's 2024, and I'm sure I don't want to see no cheap results. I don't want to see no cuts and telling me, oh, sorry, Miguel, this is money we got in 2019. We cannot deliver what we promised to do for you guys. So please review if your research study funds can be done in regards to 220 Oak Street so that you guys can deliver what you promised. Thank you. Any questions? I'm here 24 hours, guys.
So are there any other questions for Jessica as it relates to this report? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the report? John, thank you. Uba, can you second that? Thank you. All in favor? Perfect. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 11C. So I would just ask, there's references in this report to weekly meetings that started in January of 2023 to improve projections. And I would just ask, I know that there are a number of changes that are being made in this area, and I would just ask that you look at those as well to ensure that they're as effective as possible. And I did want to note that this motion is in front of the board with the advice of our general counsel. So I wanted that noted in the minutes. And then again, we ask that they come in a timely manner so that the board can fulfill its obligations. So can I have a motion to approve the Q3 Facility Management Quarterly Capital Budget Update? John, thank you. Nick, seconder, all in favor? Okay. I will abstain from that, but so we'll move on to item, now I've lost 12A. And I think we have deputants on 12A.
Mr. Avila?
So this is developing our strategic plan for TCHC.
Thank you. Thanks for sorry. I have a little video that I want to start my deputation. I don't know if you can see it, but hold on. Yeah, this one. It's very quick. It's only 23 seconds. You will see in this video how devastating it is to have a scooter if you forget to recharge to turn it off, or and avoid overheat. So what happened is in our communities, we don't have proper e-bike enclosures. I'll give you a good example. 220 Oak Street has completed in delivering they have completed delivering e-bike enclosures. However, again, I'm going to repeat this again. We have a problem. It's related to there is enclosures in the garage, in P1 garage. So it's empty. Why is it empty? Because we don't have an e-bike policy. So this is the situation. Superintendents are scratching their heads. What to do, Miguel? Residents come to me and says, Miguel, TCHC, we want an e-bike spot. I can't give it to you because we don't have a policy.
Mr. Avila, again, this is a deputation related to the
I'm calling you out because what happened is that I learned that 220 Oak Street proposal submitted in January 2023 has been received, number one. The second answer I got is that situation has not been dealt with the lawyers. The lawyers are still looking into the document. The document is very simple. We have a set of ideas for the e-bike parking in 220 Oak Street that can be replicated across the portfolio. It can be the solution to many of the headaches we have, and also to address fire prevention. Fire prevention. As you see the video, the batteries can explode in the units if they're left overcharging. So in order to address that, you have to invest in building up these structures so that people can park their e-bikes or the scooters without the fear that they're going to have to create a big explosion in their units, and then lose their life. Or what do you want to see happening here? A lawsuit, and then blame it on who?
Mr. Villa, if I could, Mr. Villa, I'm not sure, Madam Chair, that this is actually related to the subject matter of the report.
The report, number one.
No,
I'm trying to address something that is really important here. It's about fire prevention.
On the matter that is being presented, so it has to be connected to the report.
Yeah,
which
okay.
is the strategic planning and.
That is a strategic idea I'm providing you.
Okay, and we appreciate your idea. Thank you very much.
And in my second strategy idea is that you had to do what Barry says in his report. You have to move away from the police culture. Train your CSU officers. And the other thing is move away from trusting that CSU will deal with noise bylaw complaints. Instead, bylaw enforcement officers of the City of Toronto can address those concerns instead of giving us the go around, call CSU, and we can't sleep.
Very respectfully, Dara.
So, Mr. Avila, if you can't keep your deputation related.
I want to tell you one story. There was a councilor whose name was Giorgio Mamalotti. And he told you guys that anything I can say is legal. And don't be offended by the truth. Don't be offended by the truth, because the truth is important to be told.
We're not offended by the truth. We just have to keep the deputations
Exactly.
on topic.
I understand you completely.
So that is.
Well, my time is up. Look, my time is up. Thank you for all the entertainment. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you listen and avoid a lawsuit.
We did, and I think, yes, we did. So thank you very much. And I think we have another deputant on this, Veronica Rowe. Oh, she didn't come. Okay. So then we will move on to item. Oh, we need a motion. Oh, sorry. Are there any questions or comments as it relates to Ada's report on the street? Nick, thank you. Sorry, thank you.
So in terms of the strategic planning process, is this sit with the governance, like is the governance committee the de facto strategic planning committee of the board, or is this, like, where does this sit in terms of the board being engaged in the strategic planning process? Is that, I can keep going, but I feel like, yeah.
Ada, do you want to answer that? And then I'll just add my comments.
Through the chair, is the question which committee is the main committee?
Well, this is coming through the governance committee, I think, right? And so the process that lays out from Q1 2023 to Q3 2024, is that being overseen by the governance committee, or is that, what I'm getting at is the strategic planning process being formulated at that committee level, at the board level, or is there, like, I've generally seen on other boards, there's like a strategic planning subcommittee because it's a sort of a key element of the board's work. So just trying to understand like how it's being situated as it relates to the overall board's involvement and responsibility and so on.
Understood, thank you. So the first two phases have been conducted by TCHC internally. They are largely homework, review of background materials, and setup. And this was as the financial strategy was underway last year. The next phase that we're going into is stakeholder engagement. And as we develop a robust plan here, a plan for board engagement will be created and submitted, and I believe it will be through GCHRC as the first touch point. And,
Nick, I won't preempt you, so you go ahead.
You go ahead. I'll keep going after you, but it looks like you have something to say on that.
So my comment on this is a key responsibility of the board. So I do think that it has to move from GCHRC to the board. I would like us to consider a retreat or some special board meeting or something. And I did find your report. I don't consider the board, when it comes to strategic planning, just a stakeholder. And then in the finalization stage, approval by the board isn't mentioned. And I think that those are key components, and it's a key responsibility of the board. So I would ask that you take this beyond just GCHRC so that all board members are participating, because we all come with different perspectives and different experience. And it is a board approved process. So
yeah, maybe just to pile on a little bit. I think you sort of articulated well, like the board's not just a stakeholder. Like in my mind, the board is the owner of it, and,
Yes.
and management's absolutely supporting and plays a pivotal role, and management has to be behind the strategy as well. But fundamentally, it's the board has to be the board's strategy as sort of well, in conjunction with management. And I'm not sure if that requires sort of rethinking the process or not, but from my personal perspective, I think this is important enough. We should be allocating in-camera time every board meeting from now till the end of the process, because we're really setting like the game plan for the next 5 years for the corporation.
Yes.
And there's a lot, and it's not status quo since the last 5 years. So to me, this is something that requires both engagement and a sense of true ownership by the board, more so than like a report, approving a report and then approving the final report. So not to sort of muddy the waters, but I do sort of think the process needs to be, at least as I understand it from this presentation, rethought a little bit.
Yes, I totally agree, but I think beyond just a time in each meeting, it would be great if we set aside a meeting or a retreat or something that we actually spend just time talking about this and nothing else, because you can see the time runs away from us. And so I would ask that, I know there's a lot of diagrams and steps, and I would ask that you include the board component as Nick has outlined, because I think that is certainly lacking, and this goes back to my comment about the work plans. So somehow we have to, Debbie?
And if I may add, I think the retreat has to be a facilitated conversation with the board.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
So through the chair, we'll come back with a more, a report back on how we will engage the board and all of the touch points related to that.
And for what it's worth, I'm happy to offline help, and not just throwing stones, but contribute to sort of what I suppose, I just wouldn't want you to have to go away and then come back and so on. But whether it's me or the chair or someone
No, I
else.
appreciate your help.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
We will engage.
So this is just receiving the report. So I think we're okay receiving the report on the understanding that the process will be adjusted to incorporate more engagement with the board. Are there any other questions for Ada as it relates to this item? Okay, so can I have a motion to receive? Nick? John? Thank you. All in favor? Perfect. Thank you very much. And we will move on to 12B. Okay, and that was me, and I had sorry?
I don't have the deputation sheets.
We don't have deputation.
We don't have, no, this was just my question. I had a question on page 203, the action. It talks about the transfer of the development department. And the comment is that it's on pause, but that it will be moving forward, and that was not my understanding. So can somebody share, and maybe I misread it, because there was a lot of material here very quickly, but can somebody share? It's on page 203. I don't know what the action item number is. No, it's on page 203. So if you go over to the far side, I think it's, it says, once that is complete, it is anticipated that the transfer planning process will continue with Create TOT, TCHC, and the city. So,
Perhaps I can bring some clarity to
Yeah,
this point.
please.
So this motion remains in action. It is an item that is still to be responded to council. It has now become part of the conversation of the urgently build more homes and some of the directions that are included with that report. So there's a layering of recommendations that are looking at governance and some of those pieces. That work is still ongoing. And this piece has now been somewhat woven into that one. So It is not that the transfer work is complete, is that the ongoing work is still ongoing.
But my understanding from the 65,000 new homes, that we're working together collaboratively with Create TO and the city, but that the TCHC Development Department stays intact.
So I think if I can speak to it, the motion that is referenced in the report remains the motion that was approved by council in 2022. Nothing has changed in relation to that motion currently being outstanding. It may be superseded by subsequent events, but it remains the motion that was adopted at that time. So we continue to work with the city in relation to how we manage the direction that the city gave in conjunction with more recent events, and the outcome of those more recent events will undoubtedly mean that the direction that was given in 2022 will likely change, but that remains the motion that was adopted in 2022.
I'm not questioning the motion, I'm questioning the management's recommendation.
Understood.
That's what I'm questioning.
Yes, through the chair, to the chair, just the, I can just kind of summarize at the work around the 65K homes that's being led by, the deputy city manager, development and economics, within that work plan moving forward, since I think the initiation has been, the governance has been an aspect of the work as it relates to the city, Create TO, and Toronto Community Housing. So that is one element of that work that has been identified around governance, right? And yes, and so what we are, so there has not been a lot of discussion to this point relative to that governance aspect moving forward with the 65K homes. We in looking at what was brought forward at last meeting with Jag and his team around the timeline for April 17th, there may be more direction around what that governance will look like, but that's really as much as we know at this point in time.
I guess my question, I appreciate the emphasis on governance. I guess just for the staff in the development department,
Yeah.
I understood that was off the table, and that TCHC would be still engaged and the development department would stay intact, and that we would be working with Create TO, and maybe that's not been finalized. Okay.
The motion has not been closed, so the item still remains, and an ultimate.
Is that your recommendation?
That work continue. Whether the work continues to what end is, yes, I agree, it should continue, either to close the motion or to move forward, but ultimately we don't know what the formal outcome is of the process.
So I think what you're getting at, though, is the management recommendation status report, maybe just strike the last sentence, because that's not.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not, it has nothing to do with the motion, it's just to do with management's
It's what your recommendation is. Okay, perfect. Then, so can I have a motion to receive that? Nick, thank you. John, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And I appreciate you doing that, Jessica. So we'll move on to the last item, 13B, and we have a deputant. Yes, and so now we are talking about the process update on overhoused households. And sir, I would ask that you speak to the report that's been presented.
Okay, so years ago, before the amalgamation of TCHC with different housing providers, 3 of them, we used to have something called a swap units program, where our house residents can switch with other residents who were, living in single units or et cetera. So the complicated issues of our house were solved in a different manner. But in speaking to the board many times, they said that the Ombudsman came up with a report about how to deal with transferring of particular members of the community, residents who are on their house. So they have set guidelines, and they say, well, depending on the situation of the person, we can do some magic. we just have a deputy speaking about his health condition. And one of the members of the board on the Zoom said that one of his ideas, why don't we ask our business partners to swap units to accommodate this individual? That could have been a good solution, but you know, this swap of units were never accepted by the board. So, we're here now finding out what to do. But the good news is Mayor Olivia Chow has promised, you know, the delivery of more RGI units, 6,500 ones. I'll give you a good example. Last week, we have a community discussion, the community building of the social development plan of Regent Park. Mothers were saying, my children are moving out of Regent Park, and they're moving out to Hamilton. They're moving out to another cities where the rent is cheaper. So why are we allowing this situation to happen? What are we allowing? Because we don't have enough RGI units. So phases 4 and 5 are an important, in my opinion, opportunity to address the lack of RGI units, to address the overhouse situation. So I have a flyer that is posted, and you can see it. Regent Park will be delivering a community report with Daniels Corporation. So hopefully by that time we can hear from Daniels Corporation in regards to the intentions for the 500 Dundas Street East to be home for the future indigenous co-op in Regent Park. So that's one of the updates I would like to hear. The second update I would like to hear is, are those units, RER units allocated in the 2024 budget will be available for residents of Regent Park? Because we have been told through the Office of Chris Moyes that he is maybe pushing 1,000 units.
Sorry, Mr. Vila, again, we're talking about the overhouse process? I
Yes.
think you're varying from the topic.
But that's what the mothers of Regent Park told us. My children want to stay in Regent Park. They grew up in Regent Park. They went to the schools in Regent Park. They went to the community center, the aquatic center. Why they have to move out of Regent Park when we have the solution at hand?
Mr. Vila, Madam Chair, I think you're going to lose quorum in about 5 minutes. And so I just, if the speaker.
And you keep holding, can you hold my time because you interrupt me and on and off?
I'm not going to hold your time. So, Madam Chair, I think that speakers should be directed to remain on topic to the matter that's before the committee, before the board.
And I did ask you that, sir.
So again, you know, we provide you with ideas, the swap unit program, and you rejected the plan because of the ombudsman recommendations.
Mr. Avila, if you can't keep to the topic, we won't add you to the list of deputies.
Well, I can bring the mothers of Regent Park, and perhaps you can listen to them because they had this problem. So they want their kids to stay in Regent Park.
Mr. Avila, I'm going to give
they don't want to leave Regent
Avila,
Park.
I'm going to give you one final warning. If you
respect
can't
that,
keep
sir.
to the topic, I'm
speaking
letting
to
you
the
know.
problem. I'm speaking
We will
to the
not
issue.
include you as a deputant going forward.
Have also provided solutions, but the problem is you guys don't listen to residents, and you say all the time, at the core are our tenants. If you really believe on that, maybe perhaps Tom Hunter,
Sir,
before he
thank you
leaves,
very-
can
Sir,
address my
thank you very much for your time.
petitions.
And if there is an item on the agenda that is related to the matter that you're speaking
Well,
to now,
again, I'm
then
going
I
to be
would
here
appreciate you
24
coming
hours.
back.
You can get rid of me. I'm attending in good standing and on the lease agreement.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I don't know. I welcome you to come and speak to that when it's on the agenda. Thank you. Thank you. Can I have a motion to receive? Can I have a motion to receive the process update on overhoused households, unless there are specific questions from the board? No? Okay. Perfect. Debbie, Nick, all in favor? Sorry. So can I have a motion to adjourn? That was our last item. Debbie, thank you very much. John, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And congratulations, Debbie.